for young men today, particularly like young, straight, white men, I think it's kind of hard, like for me and you, to even understand the world they grew up in. It's very different than the world we grew up. Like they grew up in this woke era. And okay, now it's kind of like that's receded and wokeism has been defeated. But they grew up in a time where racialism was accepted by every powerful institution, just against them.
Right.
You know, like it was totally fine to demonize straight white men at your high school, at your college, in your movies, in your TV shows, your politicians, celebrities, everybody was just, and that does like, it unlocks a certain thing that we kind of all had a gentleman's agreement to not unlock. Like, we're just not really going to do that. You know, we don't want to be like racialists. And so I think that's a component to it too. But there's also no question that it's exploded since Israel's launched this war on Gaza.
Yeah, and it's exploded on the left, which you never heard anti-Jewish sentiment in public spaces before. You really never saw that on campuses. You know, if Israel did something, you may see a protest, but it was generally it was organic. These don't seem organic. They seem very funded, and they're very disruptive. And, you know, some universities experience vandalism and fires and crazy shit and people being threatened and doxxed. You know, it's different. It's a different level of it than I think we've ever seen before. And it's created a giant divide on the left, right? Because on the left, you have a lot of people that are, their whole life, they've been in support of Israel. Right. And now all of a sudden there's these Free Palestine people that are also on the left. So you have this divide on the left.
Yeah.
You know?
And there was that divide goes back a lot. Like there were leftist divides over the Israel-Palestine question going back really to like 1967, where most of the kind of like the Black Power movement people, like the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, those guys, they all sided with the Palestinians because they all saw it as like an extension of like, yeah, that's the whole, you know, we're against this kind of like racist colonizing, right, you know, like force. And then, of course, there were a lot of influential Jewish people on the left who were like, no, not in this case, we're okay with it. But you guys sure are right about all that civil rights stuff. But like, no, let's not look at it. Let's not look over there. But so a lot of that has kind of reemerged. Now, I do also, you know, I don't know. Like I talked to one kid who was like a grad student at Columbia, which was really like the center of so many of these protests, and he's Jewish. And I was like, so what's it like there? And he was like, they're annoying and they're Latin. Like some of their chants are like real kind of weird. Yeah, I don't really know what they mean by it. And I was like, well, do you ever feel like threatened? And he's like, no, it's not. Like, it's fine. They'll just chant as you walk by. And then I do know also that they had at least one time, they had like a Seder service, because they got like Jewish people in those protest movements too. And so they, over last Passover, it was a year ago, they had like a Seder service with the Jews like in there too. So I don't know like what percentage of them are like just against the war and seeing pictures of dead babies and stuff like that. What percentage of them are actually, you know, like harbor resentment toward Jewish people. Like it's kind of hard to measure. But I would just say that like it almost in a very similar way to like what I was talking about with the drone war against Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. It just made them stronger. You know, it's like, hey, if you want to see less Al-Qaeda, maybe stop having the American military kill innocent civilians in their land, because that seems to be fueling them. And at the same time, for the people who are so concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism, you're like, okay, well, it has exploded since Israel's been doing this to Gaza, right? So like maybe the U.S. shouldn't be funding and arming the whole goddamn conflict, because that does seem to like at least give those people a giant talking point to latch onto. Maybe we shouldn't have a system where like our political class is not allowed to criticize a foreign government, and a foreign government that's gotten us into like 7 wars, or at least played a large role in getting us into those wars explicitly. I'm not like alleging some secret conspiracy. Yeah. I'm saying like Benjamin Netanyahu is John McCain.
Right.
Like he's been telling us Iran has a nuke. He's been telling us they're 5 years away from a nuke since I was 7. Literally, he's been saying Iran is 5 years away from a nuke the entire time. And he came over here, he testified before Congress in 2002 that we, as a regional expert, that if we were to overthrow Saddam Hussein, democracy would sweep the region and there'd be all these positive reverberations. And then he goes, and you also got to overthrow the regime in Iran, and you also got to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. And like every single one of these things, not Iran yet, still pushing for that, but we went and overthrew Saddam Hussein. We went and overthrew Muammar Gaddafi. And I don't know what swept the region, but it wasn't democracy.